There are no notices of motion. There are no questions on notice from councillors. Councillors, we move to petitions. And I put petition number 19/001, Bateman's Bay Community Centre. Can I have a mover and seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Mayne, seconded by Councillor McGinley. Councillors, are there any questions or debate? Councillor Nathan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think that it's very important as a council or as in any elected arena to have the views of the community expressed, and to have it as a petition gives us an indication of what perhaps might be the silent majority being able to express their point of view by signing a petition. And as a councillor, it will be part of my lexicon of decision making, and I commend the idea of the petition, but that does not mean that everything that is in the petition will necessarily be my decision. It will be part of my decision making. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Mayne? Well, looked like, sorry. Well, I have a few questions if you were going to reserve to close. Look, just for the record and to, I guess, reiterate what councillors already know, and I guess I'd like from the General Manager just to go through the process going forward of the steps that we would take before council would be formally making any decisions regarding the community centre. Perhaps Mr Usher might answer it if you...
Through you, Madam Mayor. At a recent council meeting, council considered the feedback we had received in response to the concept plans that were placed out on public exhibition. And you recall, as part of that process, council resolved to do a number of things, and that set out the process moving forward. So council are currently working through what we're referring to as concept D to move forward the design process. And as part of that, we'll re-look at the business case for the Mackay Park development. So as part of that process, council will need to again look at the entire cost implications for council from both a capital perspective and from an ongoing operational perspective. This process from day one has included the community centre in the mix, but as has always been said, there's been no final decision made in regard to that matter.
Look, I don't know whether you would be the appropriate one, Director Usher, or perhaps Director Arthur, maybe. I don't know which one this should be directed at, but my understanding is that when we were building the business case, we were considering all of the groups that currently use the community centre would hopefully be relocated into the new community centre. From the presentation this morning, I heard that, you know, our focus is, and I know the answer to this, but I think it would be important to get it on record, that there are really only facilities there for arts, but I'd like to just have a bit of an explanation as to some of the facilities that we might see in that new complex and the range of groups that might be housed in that space.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'm happy to answer that, and my colleague may wish to add to my answer. But as I mentioned before, the uses at the current community centre have always been in the mix, always been part of the business case. All of the users of the community centre were involved in the design process, so they were invited to meet with the architects and have input into that design process prior to the concepts being prepared and post-concepts being prepared. So we've been through and had a look at the booking history for the community centre and ensure that those users have been engaged in that design process. So the fact that this was occurring is not new. It's been part of the original design concept, it's been part of the original business case that was built, and we've had ongoing engagement with those user groups. I'm aware of the issue that was raised by Mr Russell in regard to Meals on Wheels, and that's something which Council is looking at. But other than that, all of the needs of user groups we believe can be accommodated in the current concept. But as I mentioned previously, we still need to go through detailed design and business planning in regard to that to ensure that the overall development outcome is affordable to the community going forward.
Well, on that, there was the cost of $700 per booking. My understanding is that's for the whole theatre facility. Could you just have a bit of a talk about about that issue of, costings?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I suppose holistically, adding to what my colleague, Director Usher has said, my team look after all of the bookings for all of the facilities in Bateman's Bay, so we have a very clear understanding of what spaces are booked, how often, what the user groups need those spaces for. We've also provided feedback into this specific process about the costings for the different rooms and spaces. You're quite correct, the costing for $700 is for the entire theatre for one day at a community rate, but you'll know that within our fees and charges, and Mr Russell touched on that, we have commercial rates as well as community-based rates, and we have a long history of actually working with groups to try and tailor facilities to meet their needs. And Meals on Wheels is a great example down at Narooma, where we've actually added on facilities to an existing space and put freezer and other ramps, etc. in to make sure that the service was running in the southern end of the Shire. And whatever decision Council makes, whether it's the existing facility or alternate facilities, we will have that process and we'll work through what is required to make sure that all services run in a seamless manner, particularly services such as Meals on Wheels, as Mr Usher has already indicated.
Through the Mayor, just to clarify for the benefit of the gallery and listeners, the figure that has been quoted for the $700 potentially for the full theatre is in the business plan of Otium. I just need to make the point that Council has not set fees for the centre because the centre at this point in time does not exist. So just to make sure that that will be a Council decision further down the track when we have actually a building on site. So just to make sure that that's clear for everyone.
Bear with me. Director Usher, just I'm concerned by what I'm hearing from members of our Sunset Committee, and I would just seek, I guess, some reassurance myself as well, that going forward, what opportunities not only will the Sunset Committee have to, have more discussions around the community centre in particular, but not just members of the Sunset Committee, but more broadly our community. What future opportunities will there be for them to have input into this?
The key engagement activities for this process have occurred up until this point in time. It was intended to, once the final design had been worked up, that we would have some targeted engagement with some of the key groups, e.g. Swim Club and other key users, to ensure that the feedback they had provided as part of the design process had been taken on board where appropriate and that their main outcomes can be achieved.
Okay, Councillor Nathan.
Perhaps I misunderstood
Must
the
be
intent.
a question, Councillor.
Perhaps I misunderstood the intent of your question, Madam Mayor. Could Director Usher explain that in terms of the current community centre users? And because the way you couched that, it was about the swimming pool?
Through you, Madam Mayor. What I said was key user groups for the facility. I use the swimming club as a key user group, sorry, in terms of confusing you with the community centre, but of the new facility as proposed. So any new of the user groups would be, with the key user groups would be targeted consultation with those groups.
If those members of the community would like to have a conversation, I'd ask you to please take it out of the chamber. Councillors, are there any? Councillor McGinley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. Just noting the General Manager's comment that fees wouldn't be determined until there was actually a building there. That doesn't seem quite correct to me. I would have thought that determining fees would be an integral part of forming a new business case for Concept D, as it's been described. I don't see how you can have a concept plan or a business plan if you don't know what the incomes are going to be or expected. So I just want to clarify that.
I'll get some clarity on that for you. I didn't hear the General Manager say until the building was built. But, oh, you did? Okay, my apologies. But I'll get some clarity around that.
Well, through the Mayor, I wanted to make it clear that council sets fees. That was the key point, that staff and consultants don't. So that was what I was saying. Of course, we would need to have an estimate of what something may cost as the fundamental part of a business plan, but ultimately that's a council decision, not staff nor a consultant. So that was my key point. I didn't want the impression that we had decided or a consultant had decided that the theatre will be $700 a day. It was just to clarify that that will come to council, but of course we have to have some assumptions in relation to the range of fees, otherwise yes, you cannot build a business case. But the key point I was making was that staff do not set fees, nor consultants. Council does.
Councillor Brown.
Yeah, just a clarification real quick. There's been some discussion, and I know there's been this issue about almost some kind of conspiracy theory that in 2012, underneath the cover of darkness, that council changed the use from community use to operational. Sorry about that. Yeah, so I was here, and I think Councillor Pollock was. You might like to assist me on this, but my understanding was that the community facility was built on community land. On operational land, but a little bit was built on community land. Was that right? Can you just clarify? Can you help us out there, Rob? I know that it was operational land from day one.
Community centre was built on operational land. The actual technical boundary of the operational land and community land was confused, and it was clarified. There was no building on any community land, but the actual boundary of the lot needed a minor adjustment, and that was that very small portion of community land was reclassified as a result, but it had no impact on the building or location of the building.
Yep. That's what I thought. Thanks, mate.
Thank you for that, Councillor. Councillor Constable.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I just want to, I will use the word unpack, but just some clarification on the implications of the adoption of this motion and on the moving forward with the Batemans Bay Regional Aquatic and Arts and Leisure Centre. To me, any potential, we're talking about not a huge amount of money. Well, we're still talking possibly $1 million plus if the council does consider to sell it in the future. But the implications of the process on what we're moving forward in option D and the adoption of what the adoption of this motion would mean to that process.
I'll get the General Manager to answer that question for you, Councillor.
Through the Mayor, I've got your question, Councillor Constable. So this motion is to defer, as has been stated, Council has not made a decision on the future of the community centre, albeit that it has been in our potential mix of a source of funding for both capital and then to reduce operating. That's been very clear since 2017. So this motion is just to clarify that Council defer making any decision until the capital and operational costs of the Regional Aquatic Arts and Leisure Centre has been determined based on actual tendered prices. So we all know that, the process that has been outlined by Mr Usher is that we will now progress to a potential concept D, but one never knows, one has has estimates, but when it goes to market through a tender process, that's when we can then firm up what we believe will be the actual costs, albeit that during the process we have design costs and we have quantity surveyor costs. So this is just deferring that decision, which is what the motion recommends. I hope that's clear.
Councillor Nathan.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. Could the General Manager read out the paragraph on her response to the motion, the first paragraph in particular?
Thank you, Councillor Nathan. Council has not made a decision to sell the existing Batemans Bay Community Centre. It has been identified that it could possibly be sold or leased to offset construction and/or ongoing operational costs associated with the proposed Aquatic Arts and Leisure Centre. Council has, through the frequently asked questions available on Council's website since late 2017 and circulated in hard copy, advised that the sale or lease of the Visitor Information Centre and the Community Centre are potential sources of funding to meet the cost of the proposed facility.
Councillor McGinley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. I'd just like to comment that essentially the motion is different to actually what the petition is asking for. The petition is actually asking us to cease and desist from moving forward with any plans to sell, dispose or demolish the present Batemans Bay Community Centre and hereafter to retain it and maintain it in perpetuity for the ongoing use of the community of Batemans Bay. They're actually asking us to not consider at all that this asset be sold. The motion, however, basically ignores that and says, well, no, we haven't made a decision, but we're still going to consider it as an option. So I just want to point that out, that essentially this petition is not being accepted in terms of the motion. And I guess it's on the record, as one of the speakers said. It may well be another council that has to make this decision. But I commend the community for making their views perfectly clear, and I just want to point that out.
Councillor Mayne. Oh, sorry, Councillor Mayne. Another question, Councillor Nathan?
Probably, Madam Mayor, because I'm not as good as I ought to be on procedural matters, would it be possible to have a second part to the motion so that, actually a first part, one, that the petition be tabled, and the second, that the decision be? Just to clarify what Councillor McGinley was saying, that we recognise that the words on the petition are different.
You need to ask the mover and seconder if they agree to that addition.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. Can I just ask you to say that again, please?
Just that the petition be tabled and accepted.
So that we have two parts to the motion. One is that the petition be tabled, and that way we've got the wording of the petition accepted in the minutes, and then two, that a decision. It just makes, I'm trying to find a way to make clear what Councillor McGinley was pointing out.
The most common and sensible way to deal with any petition is to receive and note.
If you would like to add, if the mover and seconder would like to add that the petition has been received and noted, i.e. tabled, you could add that. Is the mover and Mover and seconder happy with that change? Okay. Councillor Mayne, you can now close the debate if you wish.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you to my fellow councillors for positive, constructive debate. It's an important issue. I've put this up on behalf of the community, and it has come from the community. It's the community's wording as they've tried to seek to play a proactive role in this. I understand why they're doing that. Once a decision's made, it's very hard to then get back in front of that 8 ball. So this is a proactive stance, so as we as a council have a view and an understanding of what an aspect of our community believes about this important piece of community infrastructure in Bateman's Bay. And it is an important piece of community infrastructure, as Dr. McKenzie spoke to earlier.